He used to say about himself, he'd look at his hand and he would say, was is a mensch? And we could say, das is a mensch. Look what Abba made out of himself.
The man, a beloved Rosh Yeshiva who devoted decades of his life to Harbatzas HaTorah.
Everyone who he spoke to, you saw that he had a love for them and that he cared about people. It was always, what could I do to help somebody? How can I make this person better? How can I help someone else?
The dynasty, the founding Rosh Yeshiva of a legendary yeshiva known far and wide.
From the beginning of yeshiva, I remember the very first day the yeshiva started. The Rebbeim were coming up the steps, bringing food from home. The Rebbitzins made the food in their house. And in those days, sometimes Rabbi Yisrael had to stand outside to get a minyan.
The legacy, achieving numerous milestones in Harbatzas HaTorah that have inspired countless Talmidim and Mechanchem across the globe.
You touched so many people, you changed so many people. The B'tachon, the Ava, the Midas Toivis, the Chizuk, the strength of going further in life with so much you gave us that affected us and so many families and their children, how different we are because of you. We'll never be able to thank you enough, and we're going to miss you so greatly. We know that if we would be able to ask you, how would we go weiter? You would tell us, don't worry, Hashem loves us, you'll go weiter, soll sein gut, seid nicht nispol.
How did one man accomplish so many amazing things in less than 70 years? How did one person manage to treat every single Talmud like his only child? How did one individual ultimately serve as a guiding light for thousands? It all began from humble beginnings.
When my grandfather came to America, the atmosphere in America was not one conducive to Yiddishkeit. What he had in mind was he wanted to be from no matter what. He wanted a wife that was from. He got my grandmother, who was a very, very frum person. Her and my grandfather, they brought up a house that all they wanted was ruchnias. That's the house that my father was brought up in.
Rav Mordechai's parents were Meiser Nefesh to send him to yeshiva. They also developed a close relationship with their neighbors, Rav and Rebbetzin Chaim Pinchas Scheinberg, whom young Mordechai looked up to as role models.
The relationship with the Rennert family goes back many, many years. As a young boy, I remember Mrs. Rennert, Allah Shalom. She came many times to talk to the Rosh Yeshiva.
When young Mordechai was in 8th grade, barely bar mitzvah, he already possessed a deep desire to follow his older brothers to the Telz Yeshiva of Cleveland, so he could completely immerse himself in Torah and spirituality without any distractions.
I didn't know his father, but I knew his mother. She was so machshiv that her son is sitting and learning. Many parents were crying, many parents had some tears. She sent him off with a simcha gedola that my son is going to steig now. And oh, did he steig, wow. Did he steig in every which way.
And I would attribute a lot of that tzloche that he had, the steiggeist, the way he did to Adam Godel, because the Mesiras Nefesh of his mother, who sent away all her children to tell us to learn. That was an unheard thing in those days.
From his Rebbeim and Telz, he internalized the Midah of Yashrus, absolute integrity and straightness.
Elzman, we came to Telz. We came with a train from Callicoon. That's the first time that I ever met Rav Mordechai. You could see right away the Edelkeit that he had later on in life, or throughout his whole life, he had as a 14-year-old Bacharel too.
From Telz, Rav Mordechai went to Eretz Yisrael. He then underwent the life-transforming experience of joining Yeshiva Torah Or, where the Rosh Yeshiva, Rav Chaim Pinchas Scheinberg, became his Rebbe for life.
A chelik of the essence of the Rosh Yeshiva Zatzal. It was more than a chelik, maybe. It was the Emunah and B'tachon in the Rebbeinu Shalom.
At Torah Or, Rav Mordechai met Rav Yisrael Pluchek. They became close friends and ultimately brothers-in-law, who shared a unique bond with their illustrious Rebbe, Rav Scheinberg.
I was learning with my chavrusa. I wasn't getting it was a taisus we were doing. I said, something's bothering me, and I looked around and I saw Mordechai Zecharna Levracha. We were close. We learned over the years a number of times. I went over and said, would you like to start a yeshiva? And he was all for it. There was no question. The next step was going to Rosh Yeshiva Zecharna Levracha, which we figured, we'll go speak to Rosh Yeshiva and I'll say, go sit down and learn. So we went over and he said, not a good idea. A good idea.
In 1975, they returned to America, determined to take Rav Scheinberg's chinuch philosophy and revolutionize chinuch one Talmud at a time by giving them a derech chayim, a pathway for life. Thus, Yeshiva Derech Chaim opened its doors.
At the beginning of the year 1975, when Derech Chaim was still in its planning stage, there was a very short list of people who would even look at us. Some people would say, when you have a yeshiva going, you can call me back. Others would ask, how can you make another yeshiva at this time? Inflation is high and money is scarce.
They created a fortress of Torah that today numbers over 1,000 alumni across the globe that are making an impact on their communities every single day. Rav Mordechai loved each Talmud like a son. He became their guide, selflessly taking an interest and rejoicing in their accomplishments, as a father rejoices in the accomplishments of his children.
He cared. He really, truly cared about every single bacher, every single Talmud, every single kollel guy, every alumnus. No matter what stage you were in your life, he cared.
To me, Rav Mordechai meant everything. Mordechai wasn't just a Rebbe, just a Rosh Yeshiva to confide in. He was a friend. He was somebody that cared. And didn't just care, he cared the world.
Every Shabbos, we had a shiur from Rav Mordechai after davening that he gave to the alumni. And you saw that he didn't just give a shiur, he didn't just talk about these things, he lived them. Everything that he said, everything that we learned was all real.
Rav Mordechai's advice and his shoulder and his ear was invaluable.
I remember being in yeshiva, and it was a little hard. I was strapped for cash a little bit, just kind of lying low. And he called me to his office one day, and so I'm conversing, what's going on, how's yeshiva, whatever. I go to leave and he slides a $10 bill across the table. I didn't mention a thing, but he saw. He was looking to see.
For 40 years, Rav Mordechai taught, advised, cared for, and guided thousands.
He always wanted to know how we were doing, where we were holding in life. He was there to help us, to give us chizuk. And then we heard he got sick. And it couldn't be. Rav Mordechai, he's our anchor. How could he get sick?
You could see people were just beside themselves. They didn't know where to turn. The fear of what's going to be with Rav Mordechai. And why did we have such feelings? Why were we so afraid? Because Rav Mordechai meant everything to us.
They asked us to say Tillim, and I said, how could I not do whatever I can? This is our chance to do something for him. He was always there for us. He was always there if we needed something. There was no such thing as not enough time. There was no such thing as not giving of himself.
Is der Godlach Ev, sein Messias Nefesh, a Chutz Messias Nefesh, von der größten Hälfte ist gewähnt die gewaltige Miede von der Havas Talmidim. Übergegeben zu jedem Talmid Geyodua, Lakoil.
At the Levaya on Tes Adar, as tears flowed freely and emotions of disbelief swept across the very yeshiva building where Rav Mordechai labored tirelessly to promote Liudat Torah and Avodas Hashem, his brother-in-law, Rav Moshe Rosenman, summed up the epitome of Rav Mordechai.
The Barei Dashanim say, Mesucha shnas ha'oived. A yid who is an oived Hashem, so his sleep is geschmack, because he's muftach a glichtige Gan Eden. So we can say, Reb Mordechai, Shlof geschmack, you have a Gan Eden that's ready for you.
The yeshiva, and really all of Klal Yisrael, is missing an outstanding individual who had tremendous emunah and simchas achayim, and who just lived so selflessly. He really lived for others, nothing for himself. And that's a void that cannot be filled. The only thing we can do is to follow his example, to take the deep lessons that we learned from him. The Rebbeim can continue to impart that into the Talmidim.
Rav Mordechai has ascended to the yeshiva Shel Mala, where he has once again been reunited with his own Rebbe, Rav Scheinberg Zatzal, under the presence of the Holy Shechina. But his spirit still lives on. Rav Mordechai Rennert's legacy will continue being transmitted to yeshivas, batei midrashim, and homes the world over.
We need to remember, whenever we have a difficult time, certainly in our times of joy, Rav Mordechai is with us. He'll always be with us. If we just remember his smile, if we remember the glettel on our cheek when he was proud of us, we'll all be able to go further. We'll all be able to really be a source of nachas to him and to our wonderful yeshiva.
It was so amazing that we had such a Rebbe, such a Gadol, that was there personally for us for so many years. The one feeling that comforts us is that he gave over to us so much. I feel like Rav Mordechai Zetzeicha Tzadik Kosov Racha, he was a shliach from the Rebbeinu Shalom, to be on this world, to touch so many people.
He did his utmost to fulfill his potential. And he was tremendous matzliach. He was successful in that respect of fulfilling his potential to the greatest degree.
He was just an Adam Chashuv Ad Ma'od.
And we, his family, Talmidim, admirers, will never ever forget the everlasting, perpetual impact of Rav Mordechai Rennert Zatzal, the man, the dynasty, the legacy.
He was our Rebbe, he was our mentor, and he was our friend.
And only the Misa Tzadikim is Ma'ire Rakmei Hashem to be Mechaper. The Rebbeinu Shalom should please be Ma'ire Rakmei Shamayim, Misa Tzadikim, Bez Hashem, bring Mashiach Tzidkenu b'meir v'yameinu, Amen.